Welcome back to Radio Taiwan International. You're listening to Geek Out. What's your cup of tea? Tickles your fancy or floats your boat? Join us as we share passions from people in Taiwan and around the world. I'm your guest host, Tristan Hildebrand, and today in the guest seat, we have the usual host, Miss Michelle. Hello.
Hi. Wow. Okay. So Tristan actually said hello in status update a little bit back, a couple of weeks back.
Yeah, I've had a couple of guest appearances.
Yeah.
Probably so far.
So this is actually really fun that you're in the host seat today.
Fun for you. Pressure for me.
Right. Because I wanted to geek out about something that I am really passionate about, and that is the pet industry.
I think all around we're both very passionate.
We love
animal
animals.
people.
We are very animal
Definitely.
people, and it's I was so happy to learn that when you came into the office.
But what exactly about the, what'd you say, pet industry are we talking about today?
Well, I mean, I used to work in the pet industry. I graduated from high school. I moved from Taiwan to Boston, and then I began working, part-time jobs, stocking shelves and stuff, because I used to walk by a pet store every day. One of those little mom and pop ones, not a Petco or PetSmart big box store. So from then, I started really learning the ropes at what it is actually like to work in a shop that influences people's decisions and educates on, proper animal husbandry, animal care, and what is moral and ethical when it comes to teaching about pets, which is, I think, something we will always have as humans.
Yes. Hearing you say that, it brings something back up for me in my memories of going to Petco and PetSmart as a wee little Tristan. I remember you could just walk in and buy whatever animal you wanted to.
Right.
And nobody would stop you. Nobody would ask questions.
That shop that I work for, unfortunately, due to, other circumstances, closed. And I went to work for Petco for 6 months. I only lasted 6 months.
And why was that?
This is not anybody's fault, but yes, it's a lot of people's fault. A corporation can't run a pet store for various reasons. Because what corporations, especially U.S. corporations, love to do is they like to create standard operating procedure, SOP, for, each of its stores, each of its businesses. That's great when you're talking about, like, if you're a shoe store. But if you're dealing with living animals, then it's really variable what kind of situations will arise, what kind of customers you're dealing with. And of course, even something so basic as healthcare for the animals. You can't just write one SOP book and have all of your employees go on that, which is one of the arguments that I got into my, at the time, manager about, because I was, at that time, a tried and true aquarium keeper, and I knew how to treat a disease that the fish had, but wasn't written into the SOP.
Ooh, so you brought it up to management?
I actually just treated them out of my own pocket. I went and bought the medication, and which the corporation didn't have. And then I blended up garlic with fresh seafood, and I fed it to the fish in order to increase their immune system and so on and so forth.
And did you get in trouble for
I
this?
got written up.
How'd they find out?
They saw me doing it. And they were like, "What are you feeding them? You're supposed to be feeding them like this flake fruit or whatever it is, right?" And I'm like, "I'm feeding them a blend that will help boost their system so that they can fight this disease that was actually pushed onto the store." That's also something that the aquatics department has to deal with. They, headquarters or whatever, will push shipments of fish onto the stores whether or not the store can handle them. And frequently, these fish are ill. A lot of practices don't work well when you're dealing with living things.
Right. Because if you're in any other industry, let's say retail, and you're selling clothing, if the customer doesn't know how to wash the piece of clothing properly, how to take care of it, it's fine.
It's fine. What are the consequences? Right.
If you throw it away, not a big deal.
Even
but
if
these
they
are
return
lives
it,
we're talking about.
Right. If this Karen walks into the store and says, "You guys didn't tell me how to wash this thing, and I would like to return it." And okay, to be fair, the corporation doesn't take very much of a loss by just taking that article of clothing back, and that's it. Just making the customer happy.
Right.
But if you're dealing with animals, if someone buys a hamster, then the life of the animal is at stake.
Yes.
And that is absolutely unacceptable, in my opinion.
Right.
For a store to be handling this responsibility lightly.
I do think it's my personal opinion that people who are adopting or buying any sort of animal should go through a little course or a little test.
Absolutely. people go through some kind of testing, some kind of permitting for driving cars, for doing a variety, maybe not in the US, but owning guns. Basically anything that could drastically affect the life of someone else.
Right.
So when it comes to pets, they should go through some kind of educational system before someone is allowed to take one home.
Right. When I was younger, I remember going into the pet stores and seeing there was a rack of printouts, A4 sheets of paper that had maybe max 3 pages to them about how to take care of these animals. And it was sort of assumed that if you just, spur of the moment
took one
thing, had an idea, let's take my kid to the pet store to get a hamster, that you'd pick up one of these, you could pick it up, you could leave it there, it doesn't matter. Take it home with you and read it and just be a professional in how to care for this life after reading 2 or 3 pages. And it's concerning.
It's very concerning. It's super concerning. And, okay, thank goodness we have the internet today in the way that you can jump on there and fall down many, many different rabbit holes on animal husbandry and how and where they come from. What are their requirements? And it's a lot of reading. It's far more than 3 A4 pages. If you really want to know how to care for an animal and provide it, its best life, right? But back in the day when I was a kid, people didn't have ready access to the internet. You just had those A4 printouts that you mentioned.
Yeah, I was not properly educated on how to not take care of my hamster when I got my hamster.
Yeah.
And I love animals to death. I would put my life on the line for any one of my animals easily. And the misguidance, I think, of the things, the cages that they sold to me led to the ultimate demise of my poor pet hamster.
A lot of people will report, since we're talking about hamsters, that their hamster will chew on the cage bars pretty constantly, make a racket, or they'll destroy things. That's actually because their enclosure isn't large enough and they don't have enough life enrichment. They might not be the smartest animal, but they still need, something in their life that gives it interest or...
Yes.
Yeah, it has to have some meaning.
We had slightly different paths. I went the volunteer route, and I started out volunteering for my local zoo.
Yay! That sounds so fun.
But they had a lot going on there, and they still have a very robust volunteer program. And we learned about enrichment. That was one of the first things that we learned.
Exactly.
And they talked about how all of the animals you'll see in their enclosures, they all have different sorts of enrichment, and oftentimes that's like some kind of food encapsulated in something that they have to think of how to get into. They'll switch out the different textures of things, get them thinking, get them exposed to different things. And it's the exact same with our pets.
Yes, absolutely. How would you like it if you were to, be in the shoes of your animal, not that they wear shoes? How would you like it if you were in this tiny cage and every day after day, it is just the same thing? You eat the same thing.
Go mad.
You would go insane. And of course, we're not comparing intelligences, but it isn't too much different for your hamster. So,
right.
Yeah.
So pet industry overall.
Well, after the box store, which I quit, and then I went to work for a pet company that also, after a series of unfortunate events, no longer exists, but I wish it did. It was called Skipton's in Boston, mom and pop owned. And they were one of those businesses that they hired people and they paid to keep them, like good, very knowledgeable talent. And they gave us full power to say, we're not going to sell this animal to you because you obviously are not interested in keeping it well.
Did you use that?
Yes.
That power?
I used that
can
power.
Can you tell us a story of one time you used that power?
Well, I mean, okay, for example, one very common animal that people like to keep improperly is the betta, Siamese fighting fish. Right?
I used to have a betta fish.
A lot of people used to have a betta fish. And yes, you hear stories of how this fish has evolved in the wild to live in little mud puddles and things, and it's true. In the dry season, sometimes the puddle will be very small, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's living its best life. And what mankind has done is it's bred this fish to the point where its fins are really long and beautiful, but they're also subject to infection. If they are kept in poor water quality or in a tank where they might scrape up against something. And, of course, because they are called fighting fish, some people would want to buy them to fight them. Yes. Because there are no laws in place to prevent this sort of behavior. There are for like cockfighting or dog fighting, but not for fish fighting. which is just as inhumane if you watch what they do to each other. It's a natural evolutionary process in the wild, but in the wild, the other fish can get away.
Territorial.
It's a territorial
instinct,
thing, of course.
And they fight to sort of take claim over
their
that
space.
area.
Yes.
So if they don't have an area that they can escape to or a new area to move into,
one
then
will
they're
die.
just going to fight until they die.
And sometimes both will die because of subsequent infection.
Okay.
So some people would purposefully fight them in little bowls for entertainment. When people come in and start asking about, not even asking, if people come in and they take a betta fish, they point to one and I'd like to buy that one, we start to ask them questions. It's like, oh, do you already have an aquarium at home for him? Can I ask the size? Did you bring in a water sample? We do free testing. And, like, do you have food? What are you feeding them? Just like we start, maybe not shotgunning questions, but we just start to kind of wheedle information out of the potential aquarium keeper and try to get a feel for what kind of life this fish is going to have. And if this person answers in ways where they might need more information, like they need education, we provide that, absolutely. We'll like walk them through the steps and the products that would enhance this fish's life. Now, occasionally, we get somebody who we really get the feeling that they're not taking this fish home to keep it well.
Okay. So let's say I showed up and I had a little kid and I don't know anything about betta fish.
Yeah.
And you start asking me questions. I don't know the answers. Like, well, not really. I don't really have anything at home. I've never done this before.
Oh, then we'll totally walk you through everything. We're not gatekeeping. Not at all.
No. So you walk me through, and then I show an interest in learning more and doing it properly. Okay. So somebody who wouldn't be,
then we turn them down.
So what are the vibes that they're giving off, or what are their answers?
You get a range, of course. Sometimes they get really mad about it. Like, how dare you? Can I speak to your manager? You get the "can I speak to your manager" people, and I'm like, I am the manager. Eventually, I did get to that position. I'm like, I am the manager. Get out. But then you get the people who are, I'm going to complain to the BBB. Go ahead, please.
About what?
Exactly.
What kind of complaint?
Right. What kind of complaint are you going to lodge? I mean, go ahead. Complain that you're going to be a bad, aquarium keeper, and you're going to kill your fish, and therefore we decided not to sell to you, right? Occasionally, we would get somebody who'd be like, you know what? Thank you. Because maybe I'm not fit to keep this animal. And I'm glad that you're able to filter through everyone and make sure that they're going home with people they should be going home with.
Yeah.
Yeah. Occasionally, we do get a thank you, which is really lovely. Those are nice days.
Yes. Actually, if you don't mind, I would love to share a story that
please.
I totally forgot about this in relating to animals, but now talking about fish. It was just a couple months ago that I was invited to sing at an event. And this event was sort of a fair type, festival type of event. And they said, we're going to make it fun. We're going to have games. We're going to have prizes.
Yeah.
And one of those prizes is going to be goldfish. They're going to, if they can scoop up the fish with this little, paper or whatever, then they can take the fish home. And when I found out about this, it was one of my friends running the event that said that he had to go pick up 1,000 goldfish. And I said, hold on now.
Why?
Yeah, what? What? And you're going to have the goldfish be subject to these children, fishing them up. And then where are the regulations? What are the regulations? Are you sure those people just attending the event are really ready to take care of a life and want to take that home?
Yep.
And I looked up all this information online. Thankfully, it was readily available, showing just how many of those goldfish end up in dumpsters after these events because they don't want them. They don't want them. And then they order a surplus of goldfish, and they can maybe they can give away a couple hundred, but then the rest just flush them.
I mean, exactly. What exactly is the chance that this goldfish is going to live? 1 in 200? It's actually an really abysmal, horrible practice that people shouldn't be perpetuating.
So at the time, they had already ordered these fish from the pet store, and he was supposed to go pick them up the next day. So they already had 1,000 goldfish on hand, ready to give away. Okay. And I stood my ground. I said, I will put this in the news. I will tell all my reporter friends. We'll make a big deal out of it.
Oh,
and
my goodness,
not going to sing at the event.
Thank you.
If you do not clean this up. He's like, okay, well, tell me what to do. I'm like, well, you're going to have to write a message. You're going to have to do this. So I helped him with the email to the pet store and said, hey, I'm really sorry. I don't know what you're going to do with these 1,000 goldfish. I'm willing to help out. Tell me what we can do to help, but it is not a good idea. And we realized that, thankfully. And the pet store actually responded very nicely and said, hey, we totally understand. Actually, we've been encouraging a lot of event organizers to instead offer a voucher for, I think it was some kind of a
That's such a good idea.
Fish or
there
something.
You go. Right, perfect.
Yeah, and then if the family, the parents and the kid are interested, then they can find a day where they have the time to think about it. You know, they go in, they make the decision, they learn more, and then
brilliant.
They
can
can
and
adopt.
Instead, like use little plastic goldfish to win said voucher, and then bam.
Right, and they even have waterproof electric, like battery-powered goldfish that move around. So why would you need the real thing?
Exactly. It is 2024, folks. Thank you so much for doing that.
I would not let myself go on if I had not stood up and made a fuss about it.
I do have a story where, to kind of build on yours, some guy ordered a bunch of goldfish on the phone, and when he came in to pick it up, we discovered that this was for frat hazing.
What did you do?
Okay, so those who are faint of heart, please turn away or mute it for like 30 seconds. They were gonna like use them for frat hazing, meaning to swallow them.
Oh my God.
And like these guys were in there and they're like laughing about it and they're like broing about it in the store, and I'm like, are you guys gonna use these to haze freshmen? And they were like totally admitted. They was like, yeah, we're gonna have them swallow them. It's gonna be so cool.
How many fish did they order?
About 1,000. And we refused the sale. It's like, no, this is
absolutely refused.
How would you like it? How would you like it if this happened to you? I mean, they're not anywhere near human intelligence, but they experience pain.
Yeah,
it's terrible. So yes, we totally refused that sale. I mean,
oh my
goodness,
God.
yes, it's horrible.
That's worse than my story.
Equally, because I guess being eaten is a little bit faster.
Like they had malicious intent from
the beginning. And then you can argue whether malicious intent from the beginning is better or worse than people who would let a goldfish suffer very, very slowly over the course of days or weeks in a poor container.
Oh, either way, it's so sad.
Either way, it's terrible.
If we have both run into situations like this, and thankfully, we were there to put a stop to it. How often does this go on in the world where nobody stops it?
Yeah. And that actually brings me to talking about the difference between the pet industry in the United States, where I have the most experience, and the pet industry here in Taiwan. Now, Taiwan, I'm just going to straight out and come out and say it, is a bit behind in the ways of education. The vast majority of people still, for example, regard cats and dogs as quote unquote dirty, right? And it's like, oh, I don't want to keep a dog. Don't touch the dog. The dog is dirty. Whereas this is something that's been mostly dispelled or never came to light in U.S. culture. The food here in Taiwan is not so much being produced domestically, it's mostly imported if you're looking for high quality food. Taiwan does manufacture a lot of really good stuff, just stuff in general, but not really for the pet industry quite yet. But although we're starting to see a lot of Taiwanese companies rise up for the challenge. And that's been great to see because, I've been here or had ties to Taiwan since 1996. So to watch the evolution of the pet industry here over the course of 30 years has been exciting. Yeah.
Being in a university here, it was my first encounter with campus dogs. Oh, I call them campus canines.
Campus canines. I love that.
When I was in the U.S., we did not have that. That was not a part of our campus culture.
Some college campuses do have one.
Yeah, I remember at my university specifically, if you wanted to take your dog even on a walk through the campus, you had to have very specific permission to even do that. So we definitely did not have campus canines. And in Taiwan, it's a thing where they sort of take in stray dogs, friendly stray dogs.
A lot of companies, not only campuses, will do that.
Oh,
it's fantastic. A lot of little sometimes communities, like neighborhood communities or such, who will have like a dog that kind of just lives in the community.
And they just take care of the dog. But I have seen a lot of people feeding stray dogs the wrong sort of food.
But yeah, I definitely think it's education because a lot of people think, oh, if I can eat it, then the dog can eat it.
Yeah.
And
if the dog eats it, then the dog probably can eat it, which is definitely not true.
Which is not, if anything that's cooked, especially bone, has been, the heat alters their composition, and bone specifically will splinter if you cook it, which then becomes dangerous if a dog or cat eats it. And generally, if you think about, especially cats, they don't eat grain. Like they don't eat rice, like a bowl of rice like we do for our lunch. They're obligate carnivores. So a lot of people who are giving their cats like rice or bread that's not great for them.
But how about when it's included in the formula?
Oh,
dry cat food.
I mean, the invention of kibble in general has only existed since the 70s, 80s. So this is actually a really recent invention, and there are ongoing scientific studies on the composition of certain kibble and what they do for animals. What's currently happening is they're seeing a rise in certain diseases, especially in cats if we're talking about cats, like diabetes, which is linked to spikes in blood sugar, which is then linked to the digestion of simple carbohydrates such as rice or wheat or barley. So we're seeing an evolution in kibble.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have seen some, conflicting reports stating that there are benefits to including grains in cat foods and that there isn't a direct correlation to the spike in other diseases. But I think it's hard as a consumer to know exactly what is right for your pet, especially because a lot of trusted brands will be a trusted brand for many decades and then all of a sudden be linked to something that kills a whole bunch of animals.
Right.
And then you look back on it, you think, if I would have just switched to another company, Y company, for example, then we would have been fine.
Right.
And then Y company comes out and they have another scandal. So it almost seems like maybe a little bit of everything would be
That's actually
better.
my recommendation. Whenever people ask me questions, because they know I've been in the pet game for a long time, is there's no such thing as a one perfect food made by one perfect company. That doesn't exist. No matter how good a company tries to perfect the art of creating a food, right? So the best approach is actually to do your research, first of all, do your own study, educate yourself as much as you possibly can on the subject of pet nutrition, depending on your animal, and then moderate what they're eating, because if you're feeding some raw and then some, they call it wet foods, right? Canned foods or packet foods, and maybe some kibble, and you're switching between brands, the chances are that you're hitting their nutrition requirements close to 100% is much higher than if you were just to choose one brand and one formula for the rest of their life.
Right. And it's kind of like if you were, as a human, to eat the same exact meal every day with the same exact one vegetable, one protein, and one grain.
For the rest of your life.
For the rest of your life.
Might not be a really long life, just saying.
Yeah, a variety, an exposure to a variety of nutrients through different foods could be beneficial.
Absolutely.
Thank you for geeking out with me, Michelle.
Of course.
Thank you to the listeners for tuning into Radio Taiwan International. I'm your guest host, Tristan Hildebrand, and Michelle will be back next Thursday with another episode of Geek Out.
Bye.